The quickest way to growth is through the pursuit of purpose, because you're 7 times more likely to overcome a challenge if you come back to why am I doing this instead of how. I'm hoping people can rethink a bucket list to think about all categories of their life, not just travel and adventure like skydive and bungee jump, but relationships, creative goals, mental health goals, physical health goals. How do you want to give back? To create a map of all the things that bring you that sense of purpose so that you don't forget about those things and they don't get buried by the day-to-day is the human condition, that life gets in the way of these things. If we don't do those things, those are the regrets we have at the end of our life.
Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, a place that we get to talk about business, mindset, and today, dreaming, bucket lists. We're adding just a bunch of S's because that's how we roll. And we're also talking about the business of dreaming. I could not be more excited and honored to welcome Ben Nemtin. Thank you so much for being here on the show today.
Jasmine, good to be here.
Good to be here. Okay, so I have to start here because it's actually very unlikely. Normally, I start the podcast and I always ask my guests, how is this a win for you? So you're coming out on your own time, your own energy. You're taking time out of your day around loved ones, your business, to come here. And I asked you, how do I make this a win? And this is the first time anybody has told me, let's have fun. Like you're saying, if we have fun, then today is a win. So thank you for that. And I want to know, why is fun why is it so high on your barometer?
I think it's just because that's, for me, that's like my metric for winning in life, is just how much fun I'm having. You know, whether it's in work or it's with my partner or whether it's friends. My parents have always loved life so much and had so much fun. And I just think that we get the fun beaten out of us as we get older, you know, and when we're young, that's all we do. But then we feel like we shouldn't be doing it as much, or we get embarrassed, or we worry about what other people think, or we think it's not professional. And I've just lived my whole life trying to enjoy and have as much fun as I can. And it's led to some of the greatest, more success in business than I could ever imagine. I realized that people want to work with people they like at the end of the day. I think in the beginning of your career, it's about your accolades, it's about your experience. But as you get older, people just want to be around people that they like. They want to be around people that give them good energy. They want to be around, I mean, you talk about surrounding yourself with people that inspire you, but I think it's an energy that you get from people that ultimately just lifts your spirits enough that you just enjoy your day more. So for me, it's just, I want to enjoy every day. You know, I had an experience recently where, and this just happened, where my dad just had a stroke, and thank you, and he's okay, and he will be okay, and he will have a full recovery, but it happened in a moment, and it just happened on Friday, and it reminded me how quickly.
like Friday 5 days ago?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it reminded me how quickly things can change, how easy it is to take things for granted, and really what's important, which is, you know, relationships with loved ones, and not letting the days just zip by and whip by because you're too busy, you know, and forgetting about what's important. So I think, like, what else do we have other than enjoying our time that we have? Because that's our most precious commodity is our time. So, you know, that was a really powerful reminder for me.
I'm going to put a pin in that and then loop back to that because I like to have disparate points. And then at the end, I know it's a great episode when we are able to bring them all together. So before we start there, we're going to get into what has made you so successful and why you said when I was having the most fun, that's when I found the greatest amount of success. And there's a really unique story behind that. But you and I are in an elevator. We're going down 4 floors. And like, oh, what do you do? What do you tell me?
It's hopefully they're big floors, so I have some time because my story is quite long, but I'm going to try and tell it in a short manner because it's kind of important to understand the context for my story, because I never expected to be here. I never expected to be doing the things that I was doing. I was studying kinesiology in school, which is like physiology. I grew up in Victoria, BC, which is an island on an island in Canada by Vancouver. And I played a lot of sports. I really was trying to, actually, I just achieved one of my biggest dreams, which was I was going to the World Cup. I was playing for the under-19 national rugby team. And on the west coast of Canada, that's a huge deal. It's like it's like football in the South.
Okay.
This is where the national team trains. Rugby is a big sport in Canada. I always say it's like the third biggest sport behind hockey and hockey. So it's like, and I just always wanted to succeed. I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed. So I had an academic scholarship to a great school. I was on the national rugby team, and I was training for the World Cup. But 3 months earlier, I had missed a game-winning kick in our championship game in high school. And that pressure that I felt to not mess up again at the World Cup, don't blow this opportunity. I'd think about it at night. I started losing sleep.
Can you pause there for a second?
Yeah.
There's one thing that you'd said is like, don't blow this opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I want to highlight that because there are some things that hit me very clearly. And I just wanted to pause there because somebody right now is watching or listening and they're feeling that same emotion. Like, don't mess this up now. And for them, it might not be a game-winning kick. It could be another business. It could be a different relationship. It could be a conversation. And so I want to actually go through your arc, but I want them to put themselves in it. So there's this time where you are now going to national championships and you're telling yourself, don't blow this opportunity. Take us there.
At that time in my life, it was my whole world, right? I didn't have the life experience to understand the long game, right? I thought it was a sprint, not a marathon. Now I understand that it's the opposite, right? Like every moment is an opportunity for growth, and it's an opportunity to learn, and it's not the end all be all. So in that moment when I was 19 years old, this was my entire world. That's why I put so much pressure on myself. I didn't have the life experience to understand that there was more to come. And so that meant I put so much pressure on myself, and that meant that it meant everything to me. And I was over-indexed. I was overweighting that part of my life. And it was really becoming my identity. And what I would realize later is that I was actually living the dream, but it wasn't my dream. I was living this life that I thought I should live because it's what I thought was what it meant to be successful. But really, I wasn't listening to my true, authentic self. So at that time, I didn't know that. I didn't have the experience. So I started losing sleep. I started to get anxiety, and I started to get depressed because of this pressure, because of losing sleep, because this meant so much to me, and I was so much in my head. And so everything kind of started to slowly go downhill. And this depression stopped me from going to school, and this depression stopped me from going to rugby practice because I was so anxious. I'd miss one practice, and I didn't know how to explain why I missed that practice, and then all of a sudden I'd missed two, and it was a downward spiral, and before I knew it, I couldn't leave my house. I was stuck in my room. So I went from national rugby team, academic scholarship, bunch of friends, to not being able to go for a 15-minute walk. And I had dropped out of school, and I'd lost my scholarship, and ultimately my friends, thank God, kind of rallied and pulled me out of the house to come live with them in a new town for the summer. And only then, as I started to sort of push myself out of this self-contained bubble, I started to get a bit of confidence because I got a job. I started to talk about what I was going through, realized I wasn't alone because my friends had experienced something similar. I started to really meet new kids that were different, and they were inspiring, and they had built businesses or they had traveled around the world. I realized that they gave me energy, and some people drained energy from me, and I realized I needed to be around people that gave me energy. So I came back from that summer away. I was starting to feel back to myself, and I realized, okay, it's necessary for me to surround myself with people that inspire me. So I chose, there was only one kid that I knew that was inspiring, and I didn't even know him very well. In fact, I didn't know him at all. He was a friend of my sister, and I'd met him as an acquaintance, but he was a filmmaker, and I had always secretly wanted to make a movie. And so I just called him up out of the blue, and I said, you make movies, I want to make a movie, let's make a movie. And he said, I was just talking to my friend Dave about something exactly like this. And I said, okay, great, I'll call your older brother, and let's all get together, let's talk about making this film. So the four of us who weren't really friends came together and decided to make a documentary about something, anything, we didn't even know. But at that time, one of my friends got assigned a poem in English class called The Buried Life. And The Buried Life was a 175-year-old poem that talked about how the day-to-day buries what we really want to do. And we have these moments in our life when we're inspired to go after that thing, but then life gets in the way. And we're like, that's how we feel. This guy wrote this poem 175 years ago, and he's talking about the exact same feeling that we're feeling. We haven't done any of the things we actually have wanted to do. Why? We talk about it, we never do them. So we said, let's make a list of all of our buried dreams. And then we'll just go out and we'll just try and accomplish as many of them as possible. And every time we cross something off our list, let's help a stranger we meet cross something off their bucket list. So we'll ask strangers this question, what do you want to do before you die? And if we can help them, then we will. So we'll take a 2-week road trip. We'll tackle our bucket list. We'll help other people. We'll make a little movie. We'll show our friends go back to school. So this is back in 2006. So we beg, borrow, and steal to get this.
Can I pause?
Yeah.
Okay. What I heard you say through a beautiful storytelling, but my mind works clearly in frameworks. Because there's somebody who hears this and says, like, well, that's great that a 19-year-old kid is having an identity crisis. But I was 22, 23 years old when I had my first bout with depression. I was at UCLA Law School. And for those people who are watching on YouTube, I am in a different studio today. I'm in LA, I'm in Hollywood. So it feels like very much like a full circle moment. And when you look, I'm going to repeat back the framework that I heard through the story. When people are feeling in a bad spot, and you want to work yourself out through it. And unbeknownst to me, this was actually happening, but I only actually distilled it through what you had just said. Number one, surround yourself with inspiring people. Number two, it requires an act of courage or creativity, because I think in your case, you had to make the courageous decision to do something that really didn't make sense. It's like, I'm going to go and do something I've never done before. Number three, you had action items. For you, it was literally a bucket list, and we're going to help other people do it. But for somebody who's getting off the couch, it is to take a 15-minute walk. It is to send your resume. It's to have a list of action items and then have a clearly defined result. You had said, we are going to make a movie and then we're going back to school. So for all intents and purposes, when you're struggling, you went through these 4 steps. If you have ever encountered depression throughout the rest of your life, and I'm sure we're going to get to that story, do you think that you take these same steps?
Yeah. And I think the one that I would add is talk about it, right? So I talked about it with my friends, and then I found a therapist, and I started to share. And so what that did was allowed me to process these things that I was going through, learn about myself. I think a lot of times, especially in my life, okay, when I go through a depression, I've gone through 2 other fairly major depressions, not the depth of the first one, because through the first process, I learned about myself. I started to understand who I was, what I needed. I started to be able to see the signs earlier, so you can kind of avoid the crash before it happens. I had a support system. I found a therapist. But each time, the other consistent thing that I've noticed is that when I go through a hard time, it's because a major part of my life is not in alignment with who I am. Right? So when I told you I was living the dream, but I wasn't living my dream, I didn't know who I was or what I wanted at that time in my life. And my bucket list was the first time that I had written down or even thought about or declared the things that I wanted. It was a list of the things that gave me energy, that I was excited about. So instead of thinking, I was feeling. I was following feelings. What ignites my soul? What are the things that give me energy? What are the things that make me feel more alive? What are the things that would just be fun to do? And with a group of people who also felt that way, who inspired me to think big, who created accountability so that I didn't not do those things. Because when I didn't feel like I could do it, they were like, we can do it.
I love this.
And so the other moments in my life when I felt these bouts of depression, it was when a relationship wasn't right. It was inauthentic. I started a production company, I told you, with these same guys. And for 3 years we built it, and we finally got investment, and everything was happening. I was like, I hate this. Like, I don't like the work I do every day. So a huge part of my life was inauthentic. I was doing a job 10 hours a day that I actually didn't love, even though I thought this was the logical thing for me to do because we had made a TV show. Next thing was like, well, start a production company.
Okay, wait, pause. So you know that I do dig in, right? So if I bring somebody in, I have been watching you from a distance for a while. I am connecting disparate dots, And I'm saying this person is going to add so much value to people who are listening and watching. However, we went over we just jumped from, we're going to make a video and then we're going to just share it.
Yeah.
Go back to school and life is here. And then now we made a big jump to like the business that was a result of a passion project. And I can't tell you how many people are listening right now and they're in the process of the passion project. They're like, if I could just make it a business. And then what you said was, we just didn't make it a business. We made it a wildly successful business that got picked up on MTV as one of the highest rated MTV shows, period. And you get to this point and then you say, oh, I'm here again. Yeah.
So as I said in the beginning, it's a long story.
No, this is great.
So basically, what I'll do is I'll fill in the dots and you jump in.
Okay.
And at any point. Okay. So we decided in that very first tour, before the TV show, the book, before we moved to LA, before any of the list items have been crossed off, that we were just going to go and just try and do as many of these wild dreams as possible in 2 weeks and then help other people. That was it. 2-week road trip. We hit the road. We literally just scraped this tour together. We bore an RV. We got a camera on eBay. We throw parties in Victoria to raise money so we could pay for gas. We have no money. We worked 2 jobs. I was working as a beer rep at the time. I was cold calling companies, pretending we had a production company so that we could get sponsors for this film that we hadn't made, the production company that we didn't have, so that we could actually just raise $7,000 through 4 people by working a job, by getting sponsors, in-kind sponsorship to make this happen. We hit the road, okay? What we didn't expect is that people would hear about this road trip and they would want to help. So strangers saw us on the news. By the way, this is pre-social media, 2006. So this is like before influencers, before things went viral. Facebook was still in schools. Twitter just started. YouTube just getting going. So this was traditional. We would drive up to radio stations, park there, and we wouldn't leave until they put us on the air. We said, we're in your town. We're trying to cross off this list item. We also want to help you. Send us your dreams. So people started to hear about it. And they would say, I saw on your list, number 8 is ride a bull. I can help you get on a bull. I saw on your list, make a toast at a stranger's wedding. My buddy's getting married. I'm the best man. I can get you in. And all this support came in. Then people would send us their dreams. I've always dreamed of singing a duet with Beyonce. Always dreamed of flying a fighter jet. Always dreamed of hiking Machu Picchu. So we did not expect this response. We were overwhelmed. It was national news around the world. All these people. So we come back from that 2-week road trip and we're like, oh my God, we have to keep doing this. Go back to school. Raise more money through sponsors. We got Levi's on board. We got Palm Pilot on board, right?
Palm Pilot. Wow. It's like next up we got the rotary phone.
Throwback. That's right.
Okay. This is huge though. I mean, Palm Pilot at this time was huge.
Yeah. So so as teenagers, basically like 20, 19-year-olds, without any promise of value, we were able to get $250,000 from Levi's, $150,000 from Palm, in-kind PR from Levi's, phones from Palm. We bought an old purple bus. We got a crew from LA to follow us. Next summer, we do 2 months on the road, bigger list items, help more people, come down to the States. And we're still filming this documentary. We decide, after we realize how expensive post-production is, and we've run out of money, that we want to go after number 53 on the list, which is make a TV show. So we take this footage we've been filming.
So wait, you guys started the documentary, but actually didn't, you said we're going to go back to school and do the documentary, but then all of a sudden, all of like the goodwill and the buzz, you just continue filming for the documentary, not having produced it.
Correct.
This is like a typical like tech startup company, right?
100%.
We're going to fundraise and then we have our cash runway and then we realize we need to like innovate and pivot. Freaking phenomenal.
And this was like another big down, big, because we were so excited. We had actually got offered a show in Canada for MTV Canada, but they want to own it. They want to own the IP. They could recast us.
Oh.
So we're like, well, we're just going to keep doing this on our own. So we turned down the show. Everyone's like, you guys are stupid. You just turned down a show. We're like, we're going to keep doing this on our own. We're going to make this doc. We come back from this tour. We spend all our money. We don't have enough money to finish the doc. And we realize we screwed up. We just turned down our own show. We don't have enough money to finish this documentary. We've blown it. We haven't paid ourselves a dime. we put all the money to the crew so they could film this. And now we have all this footage. No one's ever going to see it. We've turned down our own show. We blew a huge opportunity. I'm going to start working at a bar. I don't even know how to bartend. So this was a big, like we hit a wall. And long story longer, through a serendipitous moment, I meet someone that knows someone in LA. I fly down on a buddy pass that someone gives me, which is a free flight. I start meeting with random people, and I start to realize, I think there's something here for a show. And over a year and a half, dozens of trips to LA, driving back and forth.
Are you bartending during this year and a half in Canada?
Yeah.
Okay.
We end up partnering with a production company. We sell the show to MTV as executive producers so we can maintain control, keep the IP, and all of a sudden the four of us drive our big purple bus down to LA to produce our first show with no experience making TV, going from a 4-man crew to a 30-person crew, and now we're trying to make this show. And so that's the journey that brought us to number 53, which is make a TV show. And so that's how the documentary morphed into the show.
Were you of the four of y'all, were you the most kind of like business savvy? Were you the?
So there was, I would say my role was like the producer. Like I was the one that was out kind of trying to make all these things happen and connect the dots.
Okay.
And Duncan had a great business head. So there was, and then Johnny was like the heart, and Dave was the people person. So we all played this role that really, if you think about it as a business,
co-founders,
it really worked. And so.
Okay. So then you guys get the show,
Yep.
and for all intents and purposes, you happily scratch off number 3, and you're expecting the ecstasy of saying another one off the list, guys. And then you get into it and you're like, well, now we're in the bucket. It was the bucket list. Now we're here.
So we do the show, and actually the show is amazing. And then it finishes. And that's when we start a production company, because we're like, well, let's make more shows. And that's when I realized
Got it.
the business of production was not something that I loved, and I started to feel this.
And so then did you go through that same kind of 5-step process? It's just surround yourself by people.
Yep. I started talking about it. I had the support system, and I knew that I think I need to change. Like, I think there's something in my life. Like, my body is telling me that something's not right. That's what the anxiety is. That's what this feeling of depression is. So I need to really do a gut check and figure out, am I on my right path?
How did you discover your next right path?
So I had done a TEDx talk a few years before, and this was something that I didn't want to do because I was afraid of doing it. I didn't want to have this talk on the internet forever, but I knew that was why I should do it, because it scared me, and so I did it.
Okay, pause. I'm a storyteller, and I'm looking at the chronology here. So you do the TED Talk. Is this after those feelings of anxiety, where the anxiety is an indication that you're not in alignment, and then you do the TED Talk?
This is about the same time, So we did a show and a book, and I got invited to do a TED Talk, and at that time we're doing the production company. So, and I loved that experience. And so someone saw the TEDx talk, and they invited me to speak at their conference. And from there, more people invited me to speak. And all of a sudden I was being invited to speak at all these conferences. And I thought, as I was feeling this lull and really like hitting this wall with the production company, I thought, listen, I know this is not for me. Why don't I just invest in the speaking a little bit, because it's working. It'll be this period between my next thing that I'll focus on speaking. But as I started to invest more in speaking, it took off. And so I went from speaking, 30 times a year to 80, 100, 150. And so the last 7 years have been a lot of speaking, where I speak to, 120, 150 organizations a year. And what I've done is I've taken all of this learning and this journey and a lot of things that we just spoke about, and I've realized that there's so many huge lessons that I've learned about life through this process. And a lot of it is around the importance of being your true self, and the importance of following those things in your life that light you up, right? The things that bring you a sense of purpose, because that is the quickest way to growth. The quickest way to growth is through the pursuit of purpose, because you're 7 times more likely to overcome a challenge if you come back to why am I doing this instead of how. And I'm hoping people can rethink a bucket list to think about all categories of their life, not just travel and adventure like skydive and bungee jump, but relationships, creative goals, mental health goals, physical health goals. How do you want to give back? To create a map of all the things that bring you that sense of purpose so that you don't forget about those things and they don't get buried by the day-to-day. Because as I told you, this poem written 175 years ago that talked about the same feeling that ultimately is the human condition, that life gets in the way of these things. They get buried by the day-to-day. But the irony is that if we don't do those things, those are the regrets we have at the end of our life. Because 76% of people on their deathbed, their biggest regret in their entire life is, I wish I would have lived for me. So the biggest problem we have as human beings is we're not living for us, we're living for other people, or we're living the life that is expected of us, right? The life that we think we should live, which is the life I was living in high school and in university when I was living the dream, but I wasn't living my dream because I was living the life I thought I should live. And that's why I was depressed in large part, right? And the caveat here is, depression is not a simple fix and there's no silver bullet, but I do think that and this is just my experience in my life, those moments of depression, a large contributor to those feelings have been this misalignment. And so this idea that, okay, these regrets we have, things like telling people how you really feel, right? I wish I would have lived for me. I wish I wouldn't work so hard. These are some of the top 5 regrets. But we're not thinking about these things in our day-to-day, right? Because there's no deadlines for these goals. And there's deadlines for everything else in our life. And so we continually push these important things. Relationships. I wish I would have stayed in contact with friends is a top regret of the dying. So we think we have all this time, and then something happens, like a family member has a stroke, or you have a near-death experience, or someone in your life gets cancer. And you hear these stories all the time, like everything changed once this person passed away, or once I got cancer. It's because you're faced with death and you are reminded of your mortality. And that's why the question we ask people, and the question we asked ourselves 17 years ago, is, what do you want to do before you die? Because death was the only thing that shook us enough to realize what was important. And we don't keep death close enough in our life. We don't understand, we don't internalize the fact that every second that goes by we will never have back. And ultimately there's this clock that is ticking that we can't see that will expire. And you could look at that and say, that's depressing. I don't want to look at that. That's scary. And it is a little bit, but it's more liberating, right? Because it puts things in perspective and it shows you, if you look through that filter, what's important in your life. And that's how you need to live. And it's very difficult to live every day like that. Right. And it doesn't mean that you quit your job and you just jump in an RV with your friends for 10 years, crossing things off your list. But what it does mean, I believe, is that you need to take time to think about what those things are in your life and write them down so they're not thoughts and they become real, and talk about them so you build accountability. You don't forget about them. You have people keeping you accountable, and you take action instead of waiting to feel inspired to take action. And you create action through movement by creating momentum, and you move through the fear that should not stop you, which is the fear of what other people think, or this fear of failure, which is the number one thing that stops people from achieving or going after their dreams, is the fear of failure or the fear of what other people think.
Okay, so I want to go in, how about this? I want to go in 3 different directions. You pick what you believe is guiding you to the thing we should talk about. Okay. Because I'm such a storyteller, people are looking that you had essentially built this really successful business with 3 other guys. Who were your friends? People like you really loved, appreciated. Excuse me. And so then you start being called to speak professionally. And so there's like a shift in that relationship So what is the conversations that you're having with that? What is the exit plan for that in like a business term? Also, I had heard you speak, I believe you called it like an action bias. Or something along those lines. It's like, I think that people who are listening here, they see you and hear you take action towards something, and action builds action, but it's that first one. So like, what are advice frameworks for us moving to that, and what are practical ways to keep death close?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I'm gonna answer all of them. Okay. First, so we had this now company, right, with my 3 friends, and I think this is really important because from my experience from seeing friends go through this, there's oftentimes a 7-year cycle with relationships. Okay, romantic relationships with businesses.
I feel like I pivot every 6 or 7 years.
Yeah,
or I pivot not in a change direction, but like I have to add something because I'm in a place of stasis. So this is like science.
I believe it is, and I'm going to say something that you can not quote me on, but I believe that every cell in your body, every 7 years, your every cell is completely new.
I heard that too.
So so you're kind of a new person.
Yes.
So it makes sense that after 7 years, if there's 3 people, everybody is a new person. Chances are that you're going to be going in different directions, and that's okay. That is just the way that humans are wired to grow, right? So they're not necessarily going to grow in the same direction. That's why not all relationships work. So what we did was thankfully we encouraged everyone to follow their own path, right? So one person wanted to go back to school. He wanted to finish his master's and then his PhD. And we were like, okay, this is hard, but if that's what you want to do, that's the right thing to do. So he left into that. And then there were 3 of us. And so we were open and honest about what we wanted. And ultimately, I had that very tough conversation, which was like, guys, we made it. We're about to get investment, but I don't think I can do this. I'm not the right person to lead this production company. And guess what? One of the other guys said, I really want to do it. Perfect. You take it. We're out. We had to have hard conversations about what that looked like, right, on the back end. But we figured it out, and I started to do this other thing.
So cool.
Again, talked with them, what feels right. And I think that, and again, I've seen a lot of friends go through this with businesses they start with friends that they weren't intending to be businesses, right?
Yeah.
They started something for fun.
Yes.
It hit, and all of a sudden, 5 years later, it's this big business, and they didn't set it up properly to be a business, or they didn't communicate like you should when you're in a business partnership. And I look at business partnerships just like romantic relationships. Like when you're in a relationship with a partner, you know if something's bugging you, you have to talk about it, right? Like this is just what we've been brought up. You have to communicate.
Yep.
Well, in a business relationship, those small things that are bugging you, if you don't have the experience, you don't really talk about those things. You're like, you know what? Yeah, it's pissing me off, but whatever. I'll just kind of like push it down and continue to charge forward. Well, those little things over time, they add up. And 7 years of those things, you're probably going to have an explosion. So you need to talk about those grievances proactively when you're in a business relationship. But also, it's okay to recycle your career. And this is a great conversation I had with my uncle when I was like, I built this production company with my friends, and we put so much time and energy, and now it's working. And if I leave, I'm giving all that up. He's like, no, you're not. You're taking what you learned.
That's right.
And you're pivoting, and you're recycling your career. And everyone should recycle their career if they feel called to, because you're taking what you learned and moving to this new thing. And that's what I did.
So
I just pivoted. And so the takeaways are, talk about the things that are bugging you proactively, or else they're going to bite you down the road. Be honest about what you want and how you're changing, and that's okay. It's okay to leave a relationship. It's okay to end a chapter, right? It's okay to recycle your career. And so that's what we were able to do after, honestly, now at that point, it had been about 10 years, right? Okay. Your second question.
Yeah, action bias.
So So
how do we take the first thing? Because I heard you speak before that action begets action.
Yeah.
So how do we get to the place where it's like, it seems like when I look at your career, it's like action, action, action. But that first 1-2 action steps, man, it feels like you're pushing a boulder up a hill.
Well, you are. You have to think about like what.
Well, you are.
Think about it's like you think about. I don't think you're pushing a boulder up a hill, but you're pushing a boulder. So like if you think about a boulder, and to move it, it takes so much force just to get it moving, because you have to start the momentum. But once it starts to move, it's easier to push.
Yes.
You've got that momentum. So think about it that way. The first step is always hard, and mainly it's because of the fear. If fear is the biggest thing that stops us, fear of what other people think, fear of failure, you have to look at those two fears. The fear of what other people think. Well, the truth is people just aren't really thinking about you as much as you think they are.
Amen.
Fear of failure, as long as you have your basic needs met, right? And this is important. So you're not risking your safety or the well-being of your family. Shelter, food, well-being. If those are met, then this fear of failure, it could be ego-driven. So you want to look at like, what is the risk, not the fear? What's at risk? And so if you can list out the risks versus the fears, you can start to really understand what this fear is coming from. And it might not be warranted. You may just not want to look bad. You may just not want to fail. And failure is just a pivot to success, right? That's where you learn. That's where you grow. And so I like analogies. So if you think about this, either the boulder or you think about, so action begets more action because it's really like compounding interest. So if you think about investing $1 a day into a compounding interest account over time, slowly, it's going to grow. It's the same with action. If you take small steps of action, and that's what people don't understand. It's like you don't need to take a huge leap. You just need to do the smallest, easiest thing so that you can start that momentum. And when you take those tiny, tiny, easy steps every day, they compound over time.
That's what
eventually,
the compounding action. Yep.
It's compounding action. Eventually, you'll look back and be like, wow, I've moved. Like I'm closer. Or something will happen one day where you're in the right place at the right time.
Yes, and
opportunity knocks.
Yes,
and it's because you've been taking the small action. And it's hard because it doesn't feel like you're moving. Sometimes it feels like you're going backwards. But you just need to know that this is part of the process. And anyone that you look up to, they did that. Anyone that you think is better than you, they're not. They just started moving and taking action, and they didn't give up. And it takes a lot of work and takes a lot of time. But as I said in the beginning, it's the long game. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. So now I know that anything I want is possible. I just have to make sure it aligns with my authentic self, my what I really want, what I value. And I have to be prepared to do the work to get there.
Right.
So action is the key. I just am creating this course called Powered by Purpose.
Okay, this is so good. Wait. Let's play a game.
Yeah.
I'm on the outside.
Yeah.
This is the first time that we're actually meeting.
Yeah.
And I want to play a game to see if I know the structure that is the current Ben Nemtin business. That is the personal brand. And then you're going to tell me how close or off I am.
Love it.
So you leave the production company.
Yep.
You do a TED Talk.
Yep.
You get invited to start speaking. Then you go from 20 to 30 to 150 speaking events a year, being named, let us not forget, top 2 most motivational speaker of like current history. Bravo. Job well done. So I've definitely done my homework, but I should, I want to make sure that, by Global Gurus, I want to make sure that I state the source. Okay, great. Cool. So there's this. And then all of a sudden, now this is only from what I've seen in the industry.
Yeah.
So now we're in the business. This is the business that has been. So in the industry, the most successful speakers who are commanding the most are essentially trading hours for dollars. There are only so many events that you could take at a certain pay grade.
Yeah.
And after that, it's you have to have more events to make more money, or you have to charge more. But when you're in the top 1% of the 1%, it kind of seems like there's this level of, okay, this is generally where most of the top big dogs play. And so when you start realizing that I'm trading hours for dollars, and I want to build another revenue stream, and I don't want to wait to be picked to be the speaker, I must be in control of a destiny that I want to create. And so if I understand it correctly, you are a New York Times bestseller. Bravo.
Thank
So
you.
you create a book that is a line of revenue. You create a journal, a powerful journal to people accomplishing goals. I have it here for y'all watching the video, the Bucketlist journal. Ben walked me through what this journal is, and it's crazy. I mean, as a journaler myself, I loved it. Like, I loved it. It wasn't even a planned plug, but I was like, please, we have to talk about this. It was a very generous gift, and it's really smart from a business perspective. So we have the book, we have the journal. There is now a course. Is the course going to be a live launch? Is it going to be evergreen? Like, who here is? And so to me, I look at you, the personal brand, as the center part of a wheel. And every arm of the wheel is pointing back to you, but it's also a revenue stream. And so when you look at what the course is going to do, where do you want people entering the flywheel? They see you on stage, they buy a journal, they buy the course. Are you going after the same person in regards to target demographic? Explain to me the nitty gritty of the business.
Yeah, totally. No, this is great because, I'm in the thick of this right now. So there are things that I've been putting a lot of thought into because, and as you mentioned, and you're right, there's only so many keynotes I can do. Yeah. And I don't actually want to be doing 120 keynotes a year because that means I'm gone 200 days a year. And I have a partner and I want to start to take that next step in our relationship. And I want to be home and I want to be, building relationships with friends and that type of thing. So, but I love the act of speaking. That's the travel that is tough.
Yes.
And the speaking world, by the way, is a wild industry. I mean, it's like you're right. There is this level where you get to the top, and it's kind of a bit of a ceiling. But actually, there really is no ceiling with the fees you can command as a speaker,
right.
And because it's about the impact you make. So you don't actually need to be a household name to command the fees that household names command in speaking if you really move people. So that's what's cool about it, is that it's actually an agent for real change because you're with people in the room and you can transform them. And so that's just, I think a lot of people have a message and it's a great avenue to deliver that message. And there's a lot of places to speak, right? There's associations, there's companies, there's private events, right? I think we see these sort of motivational conferences, but that's like a 1% of the actual, the opportunity, right? Yeah. So it is I didn't know about this business. I got into 7 years ago, and you can command 20, 30, 40, 50, 60K a talk, no problem, as you start to move into making that type of impact. So with that being said, I don't want to travel that much. So what's next? Well, you're right. The journal was the first move because not only is that something that I think will be impactful for people in the room that I'm speaking to, because it takes the things I talk about and puts them into action. If my whole thesis is around creating inspiration through action, I should create a tool that creates accountability for more action.
So good.
So that's what the journal is. But also for people that can't see me speak, they have the tool to do that as well. So that's why I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I make a product that's half book, half journal? Because I need to educate people enough so they understand, they're bought in, they trust this process, and then actually have the tool to execute the process. So that has been really cool, just to create something from nothing. And that's, by the way, just because we're on the business side, we source that overseas and from A to Z kind of own that whole process. So it's not like self-publishing where I do it with a partner, but like in Asia, found the factory, found the person to run that process, ship it on a container, boat to LA, and then distribute it through a 3PL here. And that's the way to do it for me, because most of my sales are through the speaking engagements to 500 people, 1,000 people.
So as part of your speaking fee, they'll also do a book buy or a journal buy?
It's not essential, but a lot of times because it's that value add, they'll get it.
So the marketing halo from that is like people leave the conference or leave the event and they can be putting it on social, or they take it home to their families, or maybe they experience this like amazing thing and they give it to a friend. That's exactly. And so a lot of good.
People will get it for their families, you know, or in the talk, I'll give people the opportunity to learn about it and then they can get it after if they don't have it. So that's great, but still, I'm still trading hours for dollars. And so
yes, but now if they do the book buy and your speaking fee, you're making more per hour.
Exactly.
So okay.
Exactly.
Are you direct to consumer, or are you selling them also like on Amazon?
On Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you prefer D2C? Do you want people going to your site and buying the journal?
It's funny. So I actually prefer Amazon because it's easier and I don't actually take too much of a cut. So I do make less,
yes,
but I sell more.
Right.
You know what I mean? So because it's one click and Prime, the volume is so much higher and it outweighs the hit I take by giving that percentage to Amazon. So now I just push everyone to Amazon.
Can we brainstorm about why I want you to be D2C specifically when it comes to the course? Because then all of a
sudden, the course, yes.
Yeah, but like just think about this. Like your LTV, the lifetime value of a follower, somebody who buys from you, can increase tenfold. So let's just say you're on a stage and instead of saying people QR code to Amazon, or say you find it on Amazon, you put a QR code, they scan it, they go to your shop. Now what you have is all the customer data and information. So somebody who's spending, how much is the journal? More or less? $35. And then on a cart bump up, you're like, would you like to add the book? And if you buy it in the next 15 minutes, it's 50% off. Well, I mean, of course, you can bundle where they're not doing the upsell bundles on Amazon, but specifically you get them into email communication, text message communication. You can create a campaign on social to be like, are you journaling? How's it going? Do you want to take this one step further? And so the ascension model of your product line would likely be journal, book, or inverse. Then you have a funnel to upsell them into the course. So somebody buying a $35 journal could essentially turn into, how much is the course?
TBD, but it'll be,
let's just say for math's sake, $1,000. Yeah. We're taking a $35 customer and turning them into an $1,100 customer, and that doesn't exist on Amazon.
It's true.
This is unsolicited advice, but this is what we do. This is what we do.
Yeah.
Oh,
so I do have, because what I do is I do a text opt-in in the keynote.
Okay.
And so then that pushes to email to get the resources. So I do have all their information, but it's true. I can't upsell through Amazon. I can't bundle. So it's when I only had one product. And by the way, my book is owned by a publisher. So it actually doesn't make sense to bundle that because it's going to go through them anyways. But the course is another story. And through the course, the journal comes with the course. But related to the course, the other thing that has been a constant kind of pain point is that like I show my speaking schedule. I'm like, I'm in Dallas, I'm in Atlanta, I'm in New York, I'm in Orlando, blah, blah. And everyone's like, oh, can I come in Orlando? Can I come? It's like, shit, no, sir, you can't because it's a private event. You can't. No one can come to my talks because they're all corporate private events. So when I was thinking about the course, I was like, okay, what if I include my keynote in this course? And so I built the course to one of the first videos you watch is like a custom 60-minute virtual keynote that energizes people around this idea, just like my in-person keynote does. It starts to educate them on these steps, just like my in-person keynote. And it removes all these, these unconscious bias so people have the mindset.
Okay.
But then once you watch that, then you start to go through and take the action and build accountability and move through the fear and do the work. And there's a community that starts to create accountability. So every time you take action, you do it in the community and you start to feel that inspiration by taking action. But then you have that group of people that are all going down this road at the same time because you start at the same time and you've identified the most important goal in your life and you're moving towards it. And then you're also taking action every day, right, towards that goal, but you're taking action every day towards a better mindset through gratitude, appreciation, and these practices. So
okay, so Whenever I look at an offer that is a course, I'm looking mostly at two things. I'm looking at the transformation and I'm looking at the problem. Mm-hmm. If I understood it correctly, the transformation when somebody finishes the course is they have accomplished a goal. Mm-hmm. The pain point is they don't know how, or they don't have accountability, or fear is stopping them.
Or they don't know what the goal is. They just know they're meant for more. And that's why this framework of breaking down your goals in these different categories, right? And starting to think about these 5 regrets of the dying, which is from Bronnie Ware's book, the top 5 regrets of the dying, and looking at like, okay, how do I reverse engineer my life so I don't die like most people with these regrets, which is heartbreaking. And you start to sort of tease out what are things in my life that would contribute to me having this regret. And how can I take action today to not have that regret?
So good.
So I think a lot of people feel this nagging like, there's something more for me. Like I don't know what it is, but I'm just not doing it. I'm not fulfilling the full potential that I have. And I just don't even know what it is. And you just need to start to take action to learn what that thing is, because it's not an intellectual game. It's a feeling. It's an energy, which is what I was saying before. You need to your list is like a testing ground. You're starting to try things to collect data to figure out what gives you energy. Right. And if it gives you energy, you do more of that. And that's the road you go down. And that's, if you step back, that's what people have done to build businesses out of passion, is they just started doing something because they loved it, and it just gave them energy, and they loved it more. And then all of a sudden it started to lead them down this path that they would never have expected, that led them to a business. That's right. Or, by the way, it doesn't need to be your business. You know, there's many drawbacks to turning your passion into your business, right? And we can talk about those, but you just need to carve out time to do that thing that energizes you to be who you are, so you can show up at work, so you can show up as a husband, as a daughter, as a mother, as a friend, and ultimately unlock the gifts that only you have. And there's this great quote from Les Brown, who's a famous speaker and thought leader, who says, and it's something like this, but imagine you're on your deathbed. Okay, you're in your last week of life. And on your deathbed, all these ghosts start to come by your side of your bed. And it's the ghosts of the dreams you never acted on, or the ideas you never followed through on, or those gifts that you have that you didn't sort of actualize. All these things that you'd always wanted to do, but you never did. Those ghosts come to your side of your bed, and they say, we came to you when you were alive, and only you had the power to bring us to life, and you didn't. And now we come to die with you forever. That is how most people die. And that is why 76% of the population, their biggest regret is, I wish I would have lived for me. Because what those ghosts are your true self. And you regret not living that true expression and unlocking those gifts that you have, that only you have. And I believe you have a responsibility, and we all have a responsibility to act on those, because we are the only ones that possess them. And your purpose is to give those gifts away. And so you don't need to make money off of it. You don't need to be afraid of failing, because if you fail, that's okay. At least you tried. And you don't have to end your life regretting not trying. And you can say on your deathbed, I gave it my all. And it didn't work out the way I wanted or the way I thought, but I learned something about myself, and now I know that at least I tried. And that's all I'm saying, is that you need to take action just to know. If anything, for your future self, it's not about you. It's not about the people around you. It's about your future self, so that you don't have to be in that position. That would be such a heartbreaking moment to realize too late that you fucked up. And I think that it's not as hard as you think to do that. You just need to take that easy step. You just need to enroll people in your life so they support you. Be around people that want you to win and that can keep you accountable. Talk about it so that people can help you. And know that it's a long game.
Ooh, you say that again. So if I follow what I know to be true, is that our impact is somewhat correlative to the value that we bring to somebody. And it doesn't have to be monetary value, but it's just a value that we bring to somebody. Our worth is not determined by our value, but the relationship we build, the legacy that we have. And so when I see your business, and when other people who are watching and listening look at the business that is personal brand, that is speaking, that is product, I can't help but think, oh my God, Ben, you provide so much value for people. How do we then extend the value? And my brain always, for better or for worse, I'm the person that goes to a restaurant. I count the tables. I count the servers. What's the overhead? Like I look at planes. How full is this plane? Like what is the profitability here? It's like I'm hardwired for business. And so when I hear that there is a demand, I want to see you in Dallas. I want to see you in Atlanta. And you're like, I'm so sorry, it's a private event. I do think that when you have this community and they're all about each other, that the community becomes around the mission that is the goal. Less about Ben, but they become very, emboldened because you became their leader. And what they want to do is take their online experience into an offline experience. I do think there's an opportunity, not even for you, but for anybody who's watching, is you always think of how can we create layers and more value to more people, because people will actually pay for value. So if they go through the journal, perhaps the book, they get into the course, they are a part of the community, they're staying goals, and then there is a conference that you would be able to broker or negotiate tickets at a discounted rate for your community, but you can bring in 30, 50, 500 people to that event. You then become the broker that is offline, online. The LTV of that customer, because you're getting a percentage of that ticket sale, extends from now what we were talking about, 1,100, well now it's like 1,600. Now, is there possibilities for you to get your favorite, and this is the stuff you've already done, get Levi's, get the version of Palm Pilot that is today, have them host your events, bring your people together. I think that the business that is you is so wildly untapped, and I'm begging you, spread the value. And this is not just for you, it's for people who are listening, who are building personal brands. Be the connector, create the value. Having said that, we started the conversation around your dad and his very recent stroke. And when I talked and I heard and I was studying about the relationships that you have with your parents, but there's also this story, and forgive me if I get the details wrong, but they took you to Greece and your parents were musicians and you're a child while they're playing music. What impact does this have on you? And when you see the life that your dad has lived, and so thankful that he's pushing through, but if Friday was that last moment, what is he looking at? What are you thinking of in terms of how you were raised?
I'm thinking, I wish I would have taken that trip to New Orleans with him that we had to push because of COVID. One of his dreams was to go to New Orleans because he's a musician and see the music and, experience it. And I, for his 70th birthdays, gave him, sort of surprised him with this trip with my friend and his dad. We were all going to go together, and just before COVID, and obviously we had to push. And as things opened up, we had another date on the books, and it was just like a little too much travel, and it didn't work out. And I thought, I haven't done that trip with him that was just me and him, just him and I. And I still plan to do that trip, but that was one of my thoughts was, oh no, like I hope I get to do that trip with him. And in hindsight, I probably could have made it happen. I probably could have just made it happen. And I think that my other thought was that he's lived such a full life. He's probably lived more life than most people have lived in 2 lifetimes. Like he just is so much love around him, and he's brought so many people together through music and laughter, and And so he definitely has lived a full life. But that trip I think is representative of wanting to spend more quality time with him. And so those are the things those are the places where I was going.
Thank you for that real life example, because I think that it's easy to look at somebody and be like, you're on a pedestal. You've always made the right decisions. You always say yes to the proverbial trip to New Orleans. And so thank you for sharing this, because I think it's really cool, so that when we do see that trip, if you decide to share it with your dad far or close by, whatever he is able to do, that we get to celebrate you being the embodiment of the example of living a very full life. Where do people go to connect with you by the time the show airs? Congratulations. Your course will be out into the ether, blessing and changing lives. Where do they go for all of this?
Instagram is the best place. That's just where I'm most active, and that's the platform I like the most. So that's a great spot. And LinkedIn is also a place where I do more long form content.
So for those of you guys who are interested, Ben Nemtin on Instagram.
Yeah.
And let's give a shout out to your website, because if people would like, and this is what I'm going to push hard.
Yeah.
People be so annoyed with me. I know. Buy the journal on his website so that the advice that I'm sharing with him can follow you on the interwebs. You can go through the course and the book, and perhaps one day be able to meet Ben at an event that he is hosting that's fully sponsored by the fanciest brands out there around people who want to change their life. Ben, thank you for blessing us with being here at the Jasmine Star Show. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so excited to have people experience, this course, because the keynote is something that I believe in so much, and I know that it works. And so to give people the opportunity to experience that, and then also supplement that with that action and the community.
That's right.
And my goal is that the community that's actually the X factor, where it's the supportive place where you feel buoyed. It's a tough word to say, buoyed. Buoyed to go after those things in your life that you love. And if you fail, it's okay, because you're in this space where you're going to continue to be pushed forward.
That's right.
And it's called the one-step formula because of that compounding action, where it's you can't lose if you take that consistent action every day. You can't. The hard part is sticking with it. And so that's why the accountability is key, and creating that flywheel so that you just stay in movement. And if you do that, you're going to win.
Okay, so where do they go to find it? Or what's your website?
bennemtin.com.
That's beautiful. I'm going to do a brief recap around the lessons that I've learned in the frameworks. And that was number 1, to surround yourself with inspiring people. And number 2, to talk to those inspiring people and stay accountable. To maintain and take acts of courage or creativity. To have a list of action items. And to be really focused on a result. How do you know that you've won? And it's not winning compared to anybody else. It's winning on what your terms are and how you want to live your life and be lightened up by it. And lastly, to always remember to keep death close. May we not have the ghost by our bed whispering what could have been, but may they look at us and cheer us on into the next. Thank you for watching and listening to The Jasmine Star Show.